A lot of people like to claim that the Ukraine war should stay in Ukraine, but there is just one problem. Russia doesn't seem to agree. Is Russia engaging in a hybrid campaign across Europe and even the United States in order to destabilize Ukraine's biggest allies? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about what should be the craziest story of the week. Okay, so the latest one is actually from just 2 days ago. This is the U.S. and German intelligence collaborated to foil a Russian plot to assassinate the CEO of Rheinmetall. Rheinmetall is notable because it is one of the largest German arms manufacturers producing artillery shells and military vehicles for Ukraine. This plot that was thwarted before obviously the CEO was actually targeted is one of a series of Russian plots targeting defense industry executives across Europe who were supporting Ukraine's war effort. This plan, of course, to kill Armin Papager, was the most mature, right? So likely would have been furthest along in the planning phase. When the Americans learned of the effort, they informed Germany, whose security services were able to protect Papager and foil the plot, right? This is, of course, not a one-off, right? This is part of a campaign by Russia. This is an exceptional escalation, though. Usually, Russia has avoided up until now targeting individuals from these countries. The reason is because generally, these countries will, despite the fact that Russia claims that there's a dangerous escalation and the Europeans are escalating out of control, that's just not the case. The Europeans and the West in general are extremely measured, in fact, problematically measured in how little they support Ukraine, right? There's so many restrictions on Ukrainian weapons. Remember, the whole Kharkiv offensive was only possible by Russia because of U.S. restrictions on Ukrainian weapons. And I'm not somebody who says, oh, we should just go ham on them. But I point out that there is a large spectrum of things that these countries can do, short of boots on the ground, that would empower Ukraine. And so Russia has, up until this point, had to walk this line where it wants to disrupt Western efforts to aid Ukraine, but not so much that it backfires and galvanizes public support. And up until this point, targeting individuals for assassination, particularly public figures, particularly citizens of these Western countries, has been a big no-no. But that apparently is on the outs, as this campaign targeting Rheinmetall was the largest and most successful German manufacturer of 155 shells, which, of course, are the absolute make-or-break weapon in Ukraine's war of attrition, right? The company is also opening an armored vehicle plant inside Ukraine in the coming weeks, and this is deeply concerning to Russia, given that, again, it's going to allow Ukraine to produce these vehicles much cheaper and much closer to the front lines, much more responsively. So overall, this was something that clearly worried Putin enough that he was willing to pull out and make his own escalation. That's the other thing to take away from this, right? Is that a lot of times the Russian propaganda tries to push onto the West, oh, you guys are escalating, and Putin's just merely responding. But guys, point to me an instance in which a U.S. intelligence agency conducted an assassination of a Russian official, particularly a Russian civilian in Russian territory. Hasn't happened, right? Even when the West does catch Russian spies, they get arrested, put on trial, given a fair trial with a real defense lawyer, something that Russians don't get, and if convicted, sentenced to a prison sentence, which is just comparatively downright generous compared to what Russia and Putin tried to do to the CEO of Rheinmetall, which also is worth pointing out, is that the CEO of Rheinmetall does not build the tanks, does not run the artillery shells. In fact, the joke is that there's always the CEO is the most replaceable person in a company. That's not quite true, but there's a host of other people who can run these kind of CEO positions. It wouldn't stop anything. Now, of course, Putin knows this. It's an intimidation. Its goal is to make every other German company a little reluctant to sign on the dotted line to produce 155 shells for Ukraine. Now, according to a National Security Council, or excuse me, a senior NATO official, they said, quote, "We're seeing sabotage, we're seeing assassination plots, we're seeing arson, we're seeing things that have a cost in human lives." He says, "I believe very much we're seeing a campaign of covert sabotage activities from Russia that have strategic consequences." Right? And the National Security Council spokesperson, Adrian Watson, said that in a statement, quote, "Russia's intensifying campaign of subversion is something that we are taking extremely seriously and have been intently focused on over the past few months." And this is the thing to remember, guys. This is not a one-off. We're going to talk about all the other instances where Russia has targeted U.S. officials, U.S. diplomats, people aiding Ukraine in all kinds of various capacities. But first, of course, if you guys want to target your own weaknesses, you don't need to be like Putin. You don't need to try to kill executives. How about you just up your caffeine intake with some Strike Gum? Strike Gum, 90 milligrams caffeine in every piece. It's the zero sugar energy drink alternative. This here has the equivalent of 5 Red Bulls, right? Each piece has the caffeine of a Red Bull, an Amp Energy, a Monster, right? But it has 0 sugar and 100 milligrams alpha GPC, so you will cognitively be performing your best. So check it out, strikegum.com, right? That's where you're going to get your new user discounts, your military and first responder discounts. That's where all the discounts are, right? But you can also go on Amazon and just search Strike Gum and order some there. So check it out. It's worth it. It's made in the USA. It's veteran owned, right? It's made by Liquid Core just down in Denver. It's not something that's shipped overseas by China, made God knows where with an ingredients list that you're like, who knows if it's true. Again, made right here in the USA. Yeah, it's a little more expensive. Yeah, I don't make as much money per pack, but I don't care. I'm an American. I wouldn't be living my values if I contracted this gum to be made in some factory in China, you know? Anyway, let's talk about why the U.S. has been just really, this is part of a sustained campaign by Russia going back a long time, right? And this is what makes me mad, is that a lot of people sit there and they're like, "Oh, Putin was just minding his own business, guys." This is just not true. First off, look at Havana syndrome. This is something that U.S. diplomats, FBI agents, anyone working on something targeting Russia was found to experience these sonic attacks, right? That included sustained long-term damage to their brains, hearing loss, memory loss, nausea, right? These are issues that targeted Canadian and U.S. diplomats in places like Cuba, China, Belarus, Poland, but sometimes even here in the United States. White House officials were targeted. And it is believed by many reports that this was done by Russia, right? And then covered up because it was so embarrassing. The idea that Russia could target senior U.S. officials would make other U.S. officials way, way, way less likely to come out and work against Russia. And so as a result, U.S. intelligence just simply buried it. But many reports and researchers have pointed to Russia as being the actual culprit targeting these high-level U.S. officials. And we're talking high-level, I mean like White House staff. I mean, one of the CIA's top 5 most senior people was subject to these attacks. So it's sort of hard for me to sit there and be like, okay, you're a senior CIA manager. You're one of the agency's most experienced people, right? One of the most vetted people in the entire U.S. government. So when they say, oh, it's psychogenic, I'm like, nah, dude. Nah, like, don't get me wrong. Anybody can have a psychogenic illness. But it's really hard when you're talking about somebody who has been screened to the nth degree for decades in their career to suddenly at the end of their career go, oh, I made up this totally only psychological attack from a foreign power. Nah, dude. It's the U.S. government for sure. Or I'm sorry, it's the Russian government doing it, and it's the U.S. government covering it up. But that's not all. Right, and those attacks, by the way, happened from 2016 onward. But there's even more, guys. Right? You also have the Russian bounty program, guys. The Russian bounty program was a project of the Russian military intelligence to pay bounties to Taliban militants for killing American and other service members during the war in Afghanistan. The existence of the program was reported in the media in 2020. Became an issue in the 2020 presidential election. But here's the thing, right? Unit 29155 of the Russian GRU secretly offered Taliban-associated militants bounties to kill U.S. troops and coalition personnel in Afghanistan, including during the peace talks. And this is absolutely insufferable to me because in 2010, right, Iran had paid $1,000 for each U.S. soldier they killed. We knew that. We knew Iran was bankrolling the Taliban. That's not a secret. Pakistani ISI also bankrolling militants like the Haqqani network. Not a secret when I was there. But Russia had been supplying arms to the Taliban for years, since at least 2015, right? You also had a whole host of these, right? Reports from Afghanistan in the U.S. SOCOM forces and intelligence officers said that militants had been paid bounties in 2019 for targeting U.S. military personnel, and that those bounties were raised in 2019 and 2020, likely as part of an effort to derail peace talks. Reports were based on captured militants who literally said, "I got paid to do this," right? As well as corroborated by surveillance data. The accounts of Taliban militants, quote, from opposite ends of the country and separate tribes were similar. That's extremely unlikely to just be a rando story. If you know anything about Afghanistan, you know those guys do not share. They do not play nice with each other. And so, one, I take this personally, right? But two, you see that Russia has been on a campaign. And I don't need to tell you about the 2016 elections in which it was established beyond a shadow of a doubt, right, that Russia offered help. Russia said, "Hey, Trump campaign, we will help you in all kinds of ways, right? We'll hack the DNC. We'll run these botnet campaigns that would never be legal for you to do." And the Trump campaign said, "Great, please, we'll take all the help you can get." Guys, I don't know how to be like, this is bad, right? People are like, "Oh, the U.S. interferes in elections all the time." Yeah, people were fucking furious about it. "Oh, U.S., they overthrew the Shah in Iran." Yeah, we know. Or Mossadegh in Iran. Right, it was bad. That was a bad thing that the U.S. did. So it was bad then, so it's bad now. This is part of the pattern of Russian behavior. This is why I sit there and go, okay, when you negotiate with someone like Russia, you have to understand who you're negotiating with. You're negotiating with someone who doesn't operate with diplomatic integrity. And this isn't like a value statement. This is a worldview. Russia's like, listen, everyone is my enemy. And agreements are just things that we do between fighting each other. But let's move the timeline forward through the Ukraine war. What else is happening? Oh yeah, Russian saboteurs conducting arson attacks at German factories, right? Burning down factories owned by a company that manufactures air defense systems. Europe, this is a month ago. Europe on high alert after suspected Moscow-linked arson attacks at Sabotage, right? A whole series of fires and attacks in the Baltics, Germany, the UK, Lithuania. These are the kind of expansion to this conflict, right? Now they say, there's no evidence that any of these incidents are coordinated. Security services believe they could be part of an attempt by Moscow to destabilize the West, which is generous. But here's the thing. This is probably true, right? We know that Russia's done a bunch of these stunts, but it's more than just stunts. You can see they have anti-Semitic graffiti on the Wall of the Righteous, the Show Memorial in Paris. This is all stuff that's been organized by Russian proxies. And the reason is, again, Russia's goal is to stop a unified Western response in the face of the Ukraine conflict. That's it. That's their goal. And to stop Western aid getting to Ukraine at every possible turn. That's it. That's the goal. That's why I try to call this stuff out, right? Because again, and then play the victim. Then play the victim. This is just a classic move. And we all know someone in our life who's like this, who's an asshole and pushes everyone's boundaries and pushes everyone's buttons. And then when they get called out or caught, or God forbid, get the consequences of their actions, they go, I'm the victim here. I was just innocently strolling around, right? We all know those people. Putin and Russia are the country version of that person. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. A huge thank you to the Colonel tier members of CombatVetNews.com, especially Bill Collier, Robin Colburn, Giles Marring, Eugenia Cuesta, Chris Gorsuch, Franz Zacharias. Be sure to become a member, right? Like the Lieutenant tier members. These guys get access to all the uncensored combat footage. Oh, and all of the Q&As. They can submit questions every week. I do a Q&A. You can ask me anything. Personal stuff, Afghanistan stuff, Ukraine opinions. It doesn't matter. So check it out. Thanks again, guys, and I will see all you guys in the next one. Cheers.